Hello and welcome to my build video on the engineer slash gunslinger build I made a couple days ago that I've been running on Apocalypse difficulty, pretty much as a solo player. I tried it with a couple buddies, but there are way better builds for co-op play than this one. But this one is pretty good for a self-sustaining build if you want to run solo stuff on Apocalypse and farm some of the better gear. Yeah, as you can see in the video, I'm fighting a corrupted enemy boss on Apocalypse difficulty. I managed to die once because I wasn't careful with his mutations, and he knocked me down, but I still managed to kill him. Now, the video revolves around sustaining yourself without using relics. It's pretty much a lifesteal build, if you want to call it that, paired with a critical hit chance, critical hit damage, high damage build. Yeah, I will talk about the weapons and particularly the secondary weapon because it's not a pretty much usual weapon, but I like running it with this build. Alright, so let's get into the build. We will run the heavy weapon Vulcan from the engineer as our primary because we want to use the hold the skill button to overcharge it and grant it infinite ammo, higher fire rate and higher damage for 25 seconds. And our secondary will be the gunslinger with the bullet storm. And you could run the hunter if you want, but I like running the gunslinger because it increases my fire rate when I activate it, plus it gives me additional ammo, which with the bone saw we really need. Now, for the armor, it doesn't really matter. You can run whatever you want. On Apocalypse difficulty, you'll get one shot anyways. If you're not careful, even if you have high armor, the enemies leave you with low HP. For the hearts, it's irrelevant. As I said, this build is a self-sustaining build, and personally I don't like using the relics or the hearts. That's why I use the salvaged heart, 50% use speed bonus, I like that. And for the relics on the heart, 10% crit chance, 20% crit damage, and 10% range damage. So it's all out damage. For the amulets and rings, you can see it here, it's the full Moon Circlet. It gives us a flat 20% damage increase if we are at full HP, which we kind of want to be all the time, and we most likely will be with the amount of lifesteal we have. As you saw in the video, I just got hit and I dumped a lot of rounds into the boss and I got back up to full health. But yeah, the full Moon Circlet is pretty much, for me personally, the best one because it gives us a 20% damage increase if we're full HP. And on Apocalypse, you're either at full HP or you're dead, or pretty much dead. You could use the Ankh of Power if you want. That would incentivize you to use relics every 15 seconds. It gives us a 30% damage increase, but I don't like using relics, so you can swap out whatever you want. For me personally, full Moon Circlet is the best option, and for this build works the best because it has innate lifesteal and 20% damage. For the rings, first one on the list is the Soul Link. Summons lifesteal 5% of base damage dealt, which returns to the wearer as health. So when our turret shoots for 50 or 100 or 150 damage, depending on the difficulty you're playing on, 5% of this gets added to your health, which is pretty nuts considering the fire rate on the turret. So you could keep your overcharge for a dire situation. Let's say you get hit and you're low HP and you start running away from the boss, and then you hold your skill button to activate the overcharge, and then the turret shoots faster and heals you faster. You could do that. I like popping it in the beginning. For the second ring, Stone of Malevolence, pretty much a must in every build nowadays before it gets patched. Maybe someday. Elemental damage grants 15% additional mod power, which is really nice with corrosive rounds. And for the third ring, we got Probability Cord, increases crit damage by 30%. It's nuts with this build since we're doing crit chance. And the last one is a personal preference. You could use whatever you want. I like using Microcompressor because I run the LMG and the LMG overheats a lot. But if you can play around the overheating mechanic, if you're better than me, then go ahead and swap that out. You could use Burden of the Gambler, increases crit chance and crit damage. Pretty nice if you think you won't survive a shot from anything and you want to kind of survive. Use the Black Cat ring. You could lower your cooldowns if you want. I like running Zephyr Dreamstone. It reduces the cooldown of your abilities by 3% every 2 seconds on a crit, which is pretty nice with a crit build. Not particularly useful with this build since the first skill is active pretty much all the time. It doesn't need cooldown, and the second one is the one, but it has low cooldown anyways, so it's your choice. Okay, for the guns. Bonesaw, I got mine on plus 20 with corrosive rounds and momentum. For those of you who don't know, corrosive rounds increase the critical hit chance for 20 seconds and apply corroded to enemies. Now, if enemies are corroded, they take 10% more damage from any source, because corrosion lowers the overall damage reduction of this particular enemy you have applied corrosion to. Plus, it deals 450 damage over 10 seconds, which is neat. And momentum increases our crit chance and crit damage when we score crit chance, which is pretty nice on a crit chance build. So it's pretty much the go-to mutation. For our second weapon, we are using the Star Shot, at least I am. You could run whatever you want, but I like the burst potential of the Star Shot, and it works really well with the Bonesaw since we will be holding the trigger a lot on Bonesaw, so you won't have a lot of time to swap to a secondary, use that while the Bonesaw is chilling in your backpack. So I like to use the Star Shot just as a pull out, shoot once, put it back in. Big Bang deals a massive amount of damage on enemy groups or elites or bosses. As you can see in the video, if you go back a bit, you see how I chunked the boss for a pretty hefty amount with one shot. And you use Harmonizer on it, plus 10 increases mod damage by 20% and generates 25 additional mod power for the stowed weapon. Let me show you real quick the damage. I would have to recharge it. I didn't do that. For the sword or the melee weapon, to put it that way, it's a personal preference. You could use whatever you want. I just use this one because I like the looks of it. But yeah, so Star Shot. I cannot do it on a firing range because you get knocked back when you shoot the shot. So I'll show you this way. It does 1400 twice plus the burning damage, so it's pretty much about 3500 to 4000 damage per shot, and you can see the mod power generates back up. So how do we use this build? Okay, well, you go into a room with enemies or a boss room, plop down your turret, roll away, activate the overcharge, get somewhere where the bosses won't hit you, activate your corrosive rounds and dump it. What I usually like to do is after the first overheat, I like to pop my Bulletstorm and then dump more into it. Now I'll stop shooting for a second because it's a boss fight, you'll be dodging, you'll be running, and then you keep shooting. Once the corrosive rounds run out, you can pop them back up. And you hear the sound when your corrosive rounds are back online every time, so you know once you dump in a bit of rounds, they're pretty much back up. And the neat thing about this is whenever you activate them, it reloads your weapon. So I'm at 100 bullets right now, I activate them, 150 back up. Listen to the sound. There it was. The sound indicates that the mod is up and running again. While we're doing this, shooting with the Bonesaw and our turret is shooting, it recharges our special shot on a Star Shot. We pull it out, dump it in there, and keep shooting with the Bonesaw. Do that a couple times and the boss is dead. For the traits, I like running 5 Vigor and 5 Endurance, just because it gives me a bit more health than 100. Sometimes the enemies will hit you and you'll survive with 1 HP or 10 HP or something like that, and it prevents you from being one-shot every time. I run Spirit for the mod generation and Expertise for the skill cooldown. I also like running Barskin for the damage reduction, even though on Apocalypse that doesn't really matter, but sometimes, as I said, on Apocalypse runs I get hit and I survive with 1 HP or 2 HP, and then it makes sense to have a bit of Vigor and Barskin. I like running Fitness for the evade distance. You have to be careful with this one though, since you roll pretty far, and sometimes if you're in a small fighting area, this might be counterproductive since you fall off the area. That's what I tend to do a lot. Just dodge roll and then fall off a cliff or something. Footwork is a pretty nice one. I cannot make a build without footwork nowadays since I discovered it. It's a really nice build. You can dodge so many projectiles with it, or hits or whatever, just because you're so fast while aiming down sights. And the last trait on this list is the most important one, which is Siphoner. It gives us plus 3% lifesteal. So let's count it together then. We have the lifesteal from the ring, which when we put down our turret, we get 5% of it back when the turret shoots. We got 3% lifesteal for the amulet, and we have 3% of the trait. You could also use a concoction for additional 3.5, but I think that's overkill. Personally, this build is perfect for a nightmare because you can survive the hits. Nightmare usually takes you 2 hits to die, so if you get hit once, you can survive. On Apocalypse, it's way harder to sustain this build, but I've been running it in Losomn and against some bosses as a solo player, and it works really well. And I'm saying explicitly solo player because on higher difficulty, I mean Apocalypse with more players, the bosses have more HP and deal additional damage. So on Apocalypse with multiple people, you will get one shot no matter what, even from normal enemies. So this build is more for a solo lone wolf player who needs a buddy to shoot for him, and if he gets hit, he can sustain the damage. I will just point out that with Starshot you have to be a bit careful, because you can kill yourself with this one. You can see the damage down there, and you can see how much lifesteal we get just from the turret. And if you put on your own shots, there we go. Hold on, I don't want. There we go. Your own lifesteal is pretty good as well. With the turret, yep, that is it. That's the build. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments on where to get the rings, or some of the mutations, or the weapons. Leave that in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. Yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good day.